15 years in, and the DC SEU is still at it. Still helping DC save money, reduce energy use, and build a cleaner, more affordable future. Together. Did you know they've invested $120 million in low-income communities? They put $99 million in DC-based businesses, too. And they have turned out over 300 graduates trained for the new green workforce. That is economic mobility, y'all. And that is what it's all about. Still here, still redefining power in the district. Find out more at dcseu.com.
Today on CityCast DC, Virginia horse country is like an hour away, but it looms large in the DC imagination. It's this preppy land sort of beyond the suburbs. You hear about it from time to time, and stories involving things like fox hunts. And you especially hear about it lately because Vice President JD Vance is moving there. He's ditching his residence on Upper Massachusetts Avenue for a 500-acre estate in Middleburg. The Washington Post's Paul Schwartzman just wrote this postcard from the wealthy town, and he is here to explain what the place means. Today is Thursday, July 23rd. I'm Michael Schaefer. Here's what DC's talking about. Hey, Paul, welcome back.
Good to see you.
You wrote this piece I really liked about Middleburg, Virginia, which is where Vice President JD Vance and his family of now 4 children are moving to. I feel like, look, I've lived in D.C. most of my life, and Middleburg, or like hunt country, sort of looms large in the imagination. We know that there's this place like out there near the hills where people like wear funny jackets and hunt foxes or whatever it is that they do out there. Can you give us a breakdown of the place now as Vance is moving to?
It felt very hoity-toity. I grew up in New York City, and for us, it was Greenwich, Connecticut was kind of like that. Like you needed a passport to get in almost. And Middleburg just feels very exclusive. You're walking down the street, there's like shops with equestrian wear in the windows. And
did you buy any?
I saw this. Not really, Mike. Not on a reporter's salary, but there was like a mirror for $4,600 that like looked like it belonged with King Louis the 14th or something, and it just felt very, very wealthy.
The people you quoted, one of their first names was Trowbridge, yes. And another one's first name was Pumpkin.
Junior. Trowbridge is a junior. And they've been there for 8 generations. Lovely man, though. He's the mayor. There's only like 750 people who live there. I thought it was, going in, I kind of thought conservative, but I looked up the voting records. They voted for Kamala Harris, the town, in 24. But maybe Trump just isn't their version of a Republican that's acceptable.
So, that you mentioned Greenwich, Connecticut, right? Another place with a sort of like, it sort of stands as like a totem of hoity-toityness. The difference is that Greenwich, Connecticut is like a real suburb. People like take the train and commute into the city and so on. Middleburg is kind of beyond the normal commuter suburbs. Why is Vance, move? What's the appeal of a place like that if you are the vice president of the country and you have a day job in the city of D.C.?
And you also have, the Naval Observatory, which is like, he has like 12 acres in Northwest Washington and a 33-room mansion. So it's kind of hard to understand, but maybe they want to have just a place away where he's renting 2 houses on 500 acres. And to reach these 500 acres, you have to go down like a gravel road that will be fortified by many Secret Service agents. So maybe it's just the sense of being set apart and they can just frolic in their 500 acres and not feel the scrutiny of Washington. That's my only guess. I think what he's got in Northwest Washington is good enough, but, who am I to argue here? And it's also, Mike, they don't really explain it. Right. It's not like you can call up the White House and say, gee, can we work through this real estate choice and like what's right. going on? And they'll get back
right.
to you and pencil in the numbers and all that.
So the other 750 residents, I don't get the sense many of them sort of commute into DC. Where exactly is this? It'd be a pretty annoying daily commute unless you have a helicopter.
So it's an hour west on 66. You get off 66, you hit like a 2-lane road, and like 8 miles later, you're on Washington Street in Middleburg. And, you feel like you're away, but then when you're looking in the windows and you see how much money is required to buy anything, you don't really feel like you're away. You feel like you're in Georgetown or, Park Avenue or something. It feels very cosmopolitan.
Is it known for anything in particular? I mean, like, what's the deal with the hunt country or horse country or whatever it is? Like, how did it get that history?
I think that my guess is that Jackie Kennedy really put it on the map because the Kennedys built a place out there, Wexford, the Wexford estate, in like 1963. I read some accounts. They were there like only twice before the president was assassinated. And then she ends up selling it, but remained a regular visitor because she liked to ride those horses and would take the kids out there and they'd go riding. And I talked to one woman named Punkin Lee. She's the owner of Journeyman Saddlers, which is a leather repair shop. And she described how Jackie would come in and be very polite and wait her turn and, online or whatever until they were ready to serve her. So I feel like that probably did a lot for Middleburg. But Reagan used to go out there and Michelle Obama went out there. They have a fancy resort, the Salamander.
Well, right. So that's a place that a lot of, basically it gets you to Middleburg without having to have an invite from somebody.
Yeah. And so the people in town, the shopkeepers are accustomed to, Congressman Joe Blow walks in or there's some diplomat or they're accustomed to well-known people being in their midst. I did a story when Jared and Ivanka rented a place in Colorama. They were like 2 blocks from Obama and 3 blocks from Jeff Bezos, who owns my newspaper. And so all these neighbors were suddenly had to deal with, lots of Secret Service. It can be quite disruptive, but they're also kind of used to it also. Like Ted Kennedy had a place in Colorama. They're not unfamiliar with famous people living among them.
So to extend that metaphor, Middleburg also not unfamiliar with famous people living among them. But you found a lot of people who were like not so happy about Vance coming in for a reason that had nothing to do with politics.
Right, because it's not just Vance. It's the, depending on who you ask, it's the 30-car motorcade, the 40-car motorcade. It's everything that comes with Vance. It's the Secret Service. It's the helicopter. It's just they got one traffic light in this town, right? So if the VP is rolling through, they got to hold up traffic. You got to get all 40 or how many cars through. And, if you can understand why people would have an issue with that. It's not easy. And the road he's off of is a 2-lane, it's just a 2-lane little road. So one guy I talked to who's not in the story because he didn't want his name associated with it, but he lives like a mile past their turnoff. And he was, kind of like freaking out on the phone with me about the potential, like the Secret Service will be driving at like 90 miles an hour and there's blind turns. And like it made him very anxious. And he actually was quite rude to me as he was being anxious and then called me back to apologize and just said, like, I'm really anxious about this.
Right.
You already know DC is more than just the nation's capital. We gave America the football huddle, the blood bank, and go-go music. You're welcome, everyone. Our influence is everywhere, and now it's also on display at District 5's American Pride, a free exhibit at the Martin Luther King Jr. Memorial Library, running now through September 27th. It tells the story of how district residents like Chuck Brown, Dr. Charles Drew, and Carter G. Woodson shaped the culture of our entire country. I actually had a chance to see it recently, and I don't think I've ever been more stunned nor more blown away by a single exhibit. And I remember this feeling of swelling up with pride for my city, just taking it all in. You get to stand in front of original works by DC artists, see the iconic Nixon Resigns, a Washington Post front page, and my favorite part, play a jukebox loaded with the sounds that this city invented. So plan your visit at dclibrary.org. That's dclibrary.org. Your library, your city, America's story.
What was it? I mean, when you went out there, you're driving around. Do people view you with suspicion? Like, here it's beginning already. The media is showing up.
Well, so, I've been doing this a long time.
So I've heard.
Obviously. People who are like working class, stories involving working class communities are not that hard when you go in and people will talk to you and they want to talk to you and they like that you're there. My experience with wealthy people is it's really can be very uptight. People want their privacy. They don't want their name out there. So, but I didn't really have that hard a time. I mean, I basically just walked down the main drag there, Washington Street, and talked to whoever I could find. And people were quite responsive. Now, some of them were obviously, people who work in the shops and the restaurants. So they're not like of that class. But I found this retired CIA analyst who was, basically took me on a tour to introduce me to people. Linda Tripp used to live out there, and apparently, like, her husband owns, like, a Christmas store. Unfortunately, it was closed, so I couldn't bother him. But
I noticed in your reporting there was sort of a duality. Like, the people who worked in the restaurant and hospitality industry seemed very, very excited about one of the most famous people in the country coming to town, and the people who are there because they want to live in a quiet place far from the rabble seem not so excited.
Of course. I mean, the cash opportunity here is great. It's good advertising for the community. What would be better than JD Vance coming into your restaurant and then that going out on, becoming a story that's all over the country, and now people are going to go to Middleburg and they want to go to that restaurant? So sure.
He's one of my leading food influencers in my life. But listen, the things that the worried people are worried about, the traffic, the noise, do we know anything yet about, like, literally it's a long way away. How will he commute back and forth? Is it going to be motorcade? He was just in trouble Carol Leonard reported that he'd been trying to get a military helicopter to take his kid to a golf lesson.
Right. So once again, the White House is not all that forthcoming with the vice president's travel logistics, but people have apparently seen motorcades. So I guess he's driving. But there was also a report of, when they were looking for a property, that there was a Marine One helicopter out that way. So it probably depends. I think that it's not that he's moving out of the Naval Observatory. They'll have the option, and maybe it's his wife, Usha, who will be staying in Middleburg, and he'll be back and forth. So,
but that also means, they have 4 kids. Some of them are school age. That means so there's a school someplace that someone's got to get to. I don't think a vice presidential kid travels with a 40-car motorcade, but there is some degree of, like, protection. Obviously, there should be. So it's not just the principal. It's the rest of the family that just comes with, like, a degree of hassle that most townspeople don't seem to particularly want.
I mean, it's also interesting to me that his real estate choices are quite interesting. I did a story when he was, when Trump named him vice president, he was living in Delray. And so I went out to that town and I did sort of like a similar story about, like, welcome to JD's neighborhood. And that's a very, very liberal neighborhood where you see gay pride flags all over the place. And you're thinking that, God, this is the last place you'd think you'd find JD Vance. Apparently in Cincinnati, he has a pretty big pad in also a very nice kind of left-leaning neighborhood. So I don't know what that's about. Like, his politics are MAGA and his real estate is left. And Middleburg is not anywhere near MAGA. This is not MAGA territory.
So what did you learn in those earlier pieces that might extrapolate to Middleburg, or for that matter to Massachusetts Avenue, about what kind of neighbor the guy is?
He seems like, actually, I remember in Del Rey they said, he would show up with his kids, like if there was a lemonade stand, he was very nice, very polite, unassuming guy, So in that sense, he seems fine. Seems like a fine guy to live around. It's just what comes with him that may be the problem.
And is the culture of Middleburg one where neighbors know each other, or does everyone kind of retreat to their farm and not necessarily? Can't imagine there's a lot of lemonade stands.
Well, there is the post office, though. And apparently at the post office, everybody knows each other. And everybody talks, and that's how you find out. This is what that lady Pumpkin Lee told me from Journeyman Sadler. She said, in the old days, if a famous person was in town, you wouldn't know about it till a couple of weeks later when you ran into somebody at the post office and they told you, did you see so-and-so? But now we have social media, so everything's instantaneous. And I think that's also part of why it feels so pressured for somebody who's living there. It's just this attention, exposure. These are people who like to fly under the radar. They don't like attention. They like less is more. It's not particularly ostentatious. It's refined. It's old money. It's Trowbridge Littleton the mayor. It's very nice. Things are nice. I actually accidentally called Trowbridge's father because they have the same name. And when you look them up, you get the other. If you may get the other one's phone number. So I call the number, and it's Senior, and he was a little more frank with me than his son about the intrusion, and he said he was not happy about it. We don't need the helicopters, is what he said.
I know they haven't said much, but what do we know about the future of this? Is this a thing where people think he may stay after the presidential term?
This one guy I spoke to was relieved to hear that he was renting. And, can you imagine how renters are looked on in a community like that? Oh, they're renting. But that means that there's a shelf life to his stay there. I had someone sort of confirming the lease, but not the terms of the lease. So I don't know. And I don't know what he's paying. Somebody said that he's paying market rate, but I don't know what that means. And
Yeah, I don't know if there's a lot of comps on 2 houses on 500 acres.
Well, also, I guess I could FOIA the, whatever they're paying and wait 30 years before I get it. So I'm not sure that we'll ever know. But if he runs for president and he wins, well, then Middleburg better get used to JD Vance, right? I mean, is it better than Camp David? I mean, they also got Camp David. I guess he doesn't have Camp David. Does Trump ever go to Camp David?
No, I think he thinks it's boring.
What is wrong with Camp David?
He might be right about that.
Maybe they should put it on Airbnb.
Seems like a good idea. Well, listen, when that FOIA does come back about how much they're paying, come back and tell us about it.
I'm coming back here and talking to you first.
Thanks, amigo. And that is all for today here on CityCast DC. If you enjoyed the show, why not tell a friend, rate the show, leave us a review, and subscribe to our morning newsletter. We will be back tomorrow morning with more news from around the city. Bye.